Hello everyone, Singularity here, bringing you another game from the StarCraft 2 ladder. This is a game on Shakuras Plateau, where I'm playing as the red Zerg in the top left corner, against Wariat, the blue Protoss on the bottom right corner. Now, this is the third time I record this one. Both the last times, for some reason, I don't know, the recording just wasn't working. For whatever reason, I just wasn't able to get the video, and I'm really hoping it works this time, because I think this is the last time I'm going to try to cast this game. Now, I've got a few more coming as well, but one of them is going to be just a lesson game. It's not all that interesting, and I'll let you know at the beginning of it so that you can skip it if you don't want to see it. And it's just one of those things that I indicate something you need to do, why you need to do it, and show you what happens when you don't. Simple as that. So anyway, we got Wariat that's got a few less probes than usual. It's kind of an interestingly small number. At 10 probes, he puts down a forge. Now he's trying to scout me out at this point. He hasn't found me. He looked immediately to the side first. I'm only now reaching on my side over here. And now he decides he's just coming right down here. He knows this is where I am, because I can't... He's putting a pylon down here at this time with just a forge in his base, which naturally means it's cannon rush time. Now I see the pylon as I go by with the drone. It doesn't even occur to me that it might be because of a cannon rush. I was thinking maybe later he'll be warping in units or something. By the way, just a note that I'm going to tell you about this map. If, regardless of where you spawn, your opponent cannot spawn directly above or below you. That's because this map is technically a 2 versus 2 map, and the allied positions are left versus right, or left versus right. Which means that any time that you spawn, say, you spawn up here, your opponent can't be in the bottom left position. Period. Now I see the cannon fire hitting my hatchery. I decide, okay, that's not going to work out so well. So I think I'm gonna try to kill this drone here, or kill this probe here, because I really can't take down a cannon with a drone. It's just not going to happen. Now I'm kind of watching what's going on here. I'm seeing there's not a lot going on. He does have a gateway going up, but he's not really doing a whole lot. He's got the assimilator going up. Honestly, you know, a gateway at 3 minutes and some change is pretty delayed. I think that we're all in agreement on that. So at this point, he's got the drone kind of dancing around, or the probe kind of dancing around over here, in such a way that I can't really kill it. And I decide, you know what? This drone, I'm gonna send it away. Now he probably sees this other drone go up and thinks that it's the same one. But the thing is that I'm sending the other drone down here to set up an expansion. And by doing that, I'm not completely contained in this base. Now it's important that if you're going to do something like this, make sure that you scout the other positions at least once after a little while to make sure that something like this doesn't happen. Because at this point, he's actually setting himself up to be in a kind of disadvantageous position. Now I don't know why he was setting up a gateway right up here, maybe to complete a wall off, but it's in such a position that I actually could kill it without getting attacked by this cannon. So instead he puts it down here, which is a much better position for it, because it's protected by both the photon cannons now. And 5 Zerglings cannot kill 2 photon cannons, especially when there's a cliff in between them. He's putting down a 3rd cannon to kind of complete the wall off. He doesn't have to completely block this area off, because it's going to take a while before I can even bust anything. Now I was really hoping that this cannon couldn't quite reach here, which would make it a lot easier to take this one down with just those Zerglings. So I was checking to see if 6 Zerglings could take down the cannon, but with the other one shooting, there's just no way it could happen. So he left me kind of an easy shot at this pylon here, because there's nothing protecting it from this side with the roaches coming out. Now, he does have more coming in. He's putting in this second pylon to make sure that everything's got... all these buildings have at least 2 pylons powering, which is something you always want to do. He also has a zealot down there, and he's warping in the stalker and another zealot. Now, by killing this cannon, he no longer has vision on the high ground without sending units up. That's actually a pretty big victory, because it means that it's now possible for me to start sniping down the buildings down here without them shooting back. However, I know that as soon as he sends a zealot or a stalker up here, then these 2 cannons can start shooting again. So I want to make sure that I can actually take these down fairly quickly. Now at first I actually see if I can take down the pylon, because I figure, hey, that's just the 1 pylon. But while I'm shooting here, I notice that, nope, there's actually a second pylon. Shoot. Now I actually do see this, because I have an overlord right up here. It's just barely able to see this pylon going down here. And I know that I can't let him build up his forces. The more that I kill, the better. And right now he's starting to kind of fall behind. It's starting to not be cost effective to continue this contain. And then there's the fact that this expansion is now up and running. That's basically what I was waiting for. I had to make sure that he couldn't completely steamroll me in the time that it took me to get that expansion up. I didn't have to continue building this one because I had the spare base, basically. And all I just needed to do was just keep building a bunch of roaches. More and more roaches. And anytime I could get superior positioning over my opponent, that would definitely be useful. Bear in mind that a single roach will actually lose to a single stalker. So if they're in even numbers, you might not have a great positioning. However, remember that as the numbers increase, these kind of things kind of start changing. Because, consider, the roaches do a lot of their damage right up front. These stalkers don't do quite as much damage as a roach, but they attack a fair bit faster and have better range. However, when the roaches just come in, that initial shot is doing a lot more damage. So if they're able to one-shot a stalker, then you better have a few more than your opponent has roaches. The roaches are also less expensive than the stalkers. So again, the one-on-one is a little hard to determine properly. The fact that you can warp these in anywhere you want also kind of helps, you know? Or anywhere with pylon power, anyway. However, I'm also building the roaches a lot faster than he's building his forces. He kind of let that sentry get a little too close to the roaches, which cost it pretty quickly. Remember that the sentries are pretty vulnerable. 5 roaches. No, it takes 6 roaches without upgrades to one-shot a sentry. Because, yeah. So, now, he's bringing in some more cannons. This base, he still hasn't seen this base. He still has no idea this base is there. And if he knew, he probably wouldn't be leaving it alone this long. Now, he did see that things weren't quite working so well, and he put down a robotics facility. And honestly, by now, I'd say you should just ditch this thing. Actually, I would have ditched this a while ago because it's just not working. And as you can see from the units lost, that kind of confirms it, you know? He's bringing in more forces, but it's just not worth all of the money that he's putting into this contain. I don't know why I have this still up. I meant to take that down after the beginning, but oh well. So at this point, he's got this observer up here to make sure that there's always that these cannons can always see the high ground. I was surprised at first, and then I realized, so there's an observer up here, which means that there's a robotics facility. Which means I should probably be expecting some colossi fairly soon. Well, right now, the contain is effectively broken. He's running his forces back because he can see that he's not going to be containing this many roaches. especially considering there's more on the way. This is just not a viable contain anymore. Now with the upgrades going up, that would make it even worse. Finally, look, if you look at just the supply count right now, it's really lopsided. I've got excuse me. I've got more harvesters than he does. My army is almost 3 times the size of his. It's just the fact that it's kind of stuck at the base that makes his any good. Now he's losing all these buildings down here. And needless to say, he needs, well, for one thing, he needs to build another pylon. He really needs to build another pylon because if this one goes down, he gets supply locked. If you look at the supply count up here. So he wasn't expecting much of a macro game, and now he's really stuck trying to build up his army in a way and his macro, despite the fact that he thought he had a contain on me. Now, at the very early part of the contain would have actually been a very good time to expand, just to prevent me from ever potentially keeping up with him. Sure enough, now he's supply locked. He's got 2 pylons on the way, though, which means that it's not going to be a problem for very long. Got one up there, one down here. Once the second one completes, then there's not going to be a problem anymore. Plus there's yet another on the way, so he's all good as far as supply goes. Now one thing I like, he's actually switching up into Void Rays. Void Rays and Immortals. This is definitely a good counter for this Roach army, but he needs a lot more Immortals than this. Because, well, it takes somewhere between 4 and 5 Roaches to kill 1 Immortal. Because the Immortal does a lot of damage to the Roach. The Roach does a decent bit of damage, but only once the shields are gone. But really, you don't want to start wasting Immortals either, because they're not cheap. They're 250 minerals and 100 gas apiece, and it's 4 supply for 1 Immortal. However, these Void Rays are definitely the best counter you can have for Roaches because 1, they're armored, 2, they can't attack air. Now at this point, because I know that he has a robotics facility, I actually assume that he's going to have some Colossi coming out. So I start building some Corruptors, only I'm realizing now, as I watch the replay, I don't see any Colossi. I don't even see a robotics support bay. Robotics bay? I don't know anymore. So at this point, well, let's just say it's bad news. There's a bunch of 1-1 Roaches running around. He's on 2 base, I'm starting up a 4th. And even then, our mains are getting a little mined out. So he's actually doing the right thing here. He's getting up another expansion. But he really needs to keep some pressure on, otherwise, well, the Zerg macro is faster than the Protoss. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Each unit individually tends to be stronger than the corresponding Zerg unit. And so altogether they tend to be a pretty strong force overall. But as far as the macro goes, you just don't out-macro a Zerg. Or at least not easily. It is doable, it's just not easy. So at this point, he's pushing forward, but now there's a lot of Roaches coming out to meet him. And he's going to be losing a lot of these stalkers. Now, I actually told my Roaches to focus fire on these Immortals. Which means they got caught up in this little spot here, between the force fields and the stalkers. And I mean, right now, this general force, a bunch of stalkers, a couple of Immortals, a couple of Void Rays, definitely good against a mass Roach army. In fact, they just shredded through the Roaches like they were nothing. And because I'm seeing this kind of force, I decide that I'm going to bring out a whole bunch of Zerglings. I figure, what's the worst that can happen? Well, it takes 2 shots from the Immortal to kill a Zergling. which is, considering that it's 3 shots to kill a roach, I think that's a pretty good advantage there. And this many Zerglings, 16 Zerglings. Well, they can do a lot of damage, but since they don't have any upgrades past their armor, they only have the armor upgrades, they're not going to be able to do a whole lot of damage here. Now, the Guardian Shield doesn't help, but the fact that they have +1 armor does. Now, on top of that, now you've got Mutalisks coming in, dealing with the Void Rays, which the Immortals can't actually shoot at. I didn't realize that sentry went down with the rebound shots. So at this point he lost both those Void Rays. That's a really expensive loss. And he really, as soon as those Zerglings came out, he should have kited backward slowly to make sure that, well, that didn't happen. At least he could have kept those Void Rays. I set up these spine crawlers just in case he sent in a scout, and I put out this Overseer because I figured you never know. I've seen enough players use Dark Templar that it very well could happen. So at this point, I'm building a bunch of Mutalisks, and frankly, there's not a lot that a Protoss can do against Mass Mutalisks. I mean, Phoenixes are good. High Templar will completely shred through Mutalisks like they're nothing, and they'll do the same thing to Zerglings. But he really needs to get something out. Because I figured I'd be using these Zerglings, I ended up getting Zergling speed just recently. Now, he's got a bunch of Mutalisks in here, and they're enough to quickly kill anything he's got. Like, this Void Ray goes down almost goes down very quickly. These Phoenixes are going down very quickly as well. And now, I mean, even the Stalkers can't really stand up to this. I see a whole bunch warping in, and I figure, well, I think I'm going to cut my losses. Because as much as the Mutalisks probably could have won this fight, there would have been some significant losses. And as a result, I figure, you know what, just get out of there. Now, he has spotted this expansion, and I know that there's an observer. I can see the ripple, which is why I'm putting down these spore crawlers. Now, he does see them in time and get that observer out of there, but at least I know that he won't be coming back. He sends in a scout just to see if I took this one, even because he can see the creep. And he'll see, well, spine crawlers in his face. So it's really not entirely clear. You can probably assume that it was taken when you see this. I mean, a spore crawler or a spine crawler just stabbed your probe in the face. And what more do you want from it at that point? Now, at this point, the Mutalisks still have no upgrade at all. I am getting... Where did I put that spire? I am getting the level 1 armor upgrade. But right now, the Protoss player is way behind. And he's losing a bunch of probes. He's going to be losing these 2 Immortals because he put them right at the front. Actually, I don't know if he's going to lose the second one. No, focusing on the Stalkers. And he gets that Immortal out of there because those Stalkers aren't going to win this fight. And he brings in a bunch of Phoenixes, which actually do a pretty good job. I mean, the Phoenixes will do 20 damage per volley against the Mutalisks because they're light, which is actually twice as much as an unupgraded Stalker would do. I sends this Immortal back up here, right up to its doom. And now I see this one pylon powering no less than 7 buildings, among them the robotics facility, 2 warp gates, and the 2 stargates. At least he learns his lesson right away. He puts down 3 pylons in its place. You don't want just one pylon powering everything. You're just asking for trouble at that point. So here, he's in a situation where he's now pretty well... He can't push out, because if he does, he loses all his forces. Or he'll lose his base. Now, I actually have the Zerglings here waiting, because I want him to push out. I want him to run into these Zerglings, now that they're upgraded. He only got the level 1 attack and armor upgrades, which means that he's no longer really keeping up with the upgrades. The Zerglings have the level 2 attack upgrades, I'm just kind of amused. I noticed that this warp gate is still unpowered. Right up till right now. But now that's a lot of mutalisks. And without High Templar here, it's not going to be easy to deal with this. Because they do so much damage, considering that they actually have rebound on their shots. Now, I know that I could be fighting this battle for a long time if I don't do this. So I take down the cybernetics core to prevent any more stalkers from coming out. Kill off the remaining ones, that way he can't really do much with them. Now he does blink them down there, so I decided, oh, that's my opportunity to take down these Stargates. Which means that there's really nothing more that he can, there's really no more he can't really bring any more reinforcements. So at this point, there's quite a lot that you can see going. You can see that there's really not much more he can do. He leaves the game after saying that he doesn't think he's ever seen that many mutalisks. Frankly, there's not a lot of games where you see Zerg go mass muta against a Protoss opponent, because generally it's not a viable strategy. Because usually you'll see a huge number of Stalkers or High Templar. Actually, those are really the two biggest things. Actually, a lot of sentries with Guardian Shields actually very much help against Mutalisks, because they'll reduce the damage by 2 from the initial hit, the first bounce, and the second bounce, to a minimum of 1. I think actually it's a minimum of 1/2, where it takes 2 hits to deal 1 point of damage. This Zealot, he's just looking over, he sees, whoa, this is gonna suck, but it's not gonna suck as much as it does for this guy over here. A lot of little glaive worms coming in. Anyway, so if you're gonna try to contain your opponent, make sure that you scout out to make sure that he doesn't have another base coming out. Otherwise, you could end up in a situation where you're still behind your opponent, even when you think you're ahead. And as well, as a Protoss, don't underestimate Mutalisks. They can cause a very bad day if you let them. So that's all for this game. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and I'll be bringing you another one shortly.